Most of you know my family. You've watched them grow up in Carnival. The boys, Reg and Raj, are the oldest. They're the twins. My daughter Leanne, down here in the turquoise, is right behind them. And we have another son, John, who's in Mississippi. They started coming to Carnival Glass when they were about 7 years old. By the time they were 10, they were buying their own pieces with their saved money. They love the glass. They have stayed with it. They were raised with it. They hauled it around. We would come to conventions. They would get our glass into the room, and then they were off to unload other people's glass into their rooms. Then the whole bunch of kids would get together. We'd never see them except for meals. On this side is Casey with the 4th generation. I'm the first. My kids are the second. Amanda, who has to work tonight, is not here. My granddaughter and our grandson Nathan is not here. They're the 3rd generation. And then this little 4-year-old sitting on his daddy's lap is our 4th generation. Now I'm going to turn it over to my son Reg. He thinks he's got some good stories on us. I know he does.
Well, first, if you knew Dad, he had a nickname for everybody. So I'm going to introduce you, Boo,
Hey.
Roger, and he's got another one, but you'll have to ask him afterwards. I'm Rockhead, a little stubborn. And then JM, Cat, Woody, Woodrow. He had a nickname for everybody. And this is Sam, short for Samantha. Anyway, we got started through an importer, a local importer, and I think we were probably 10 or 11, and we spent $100 each. We got to choose what we wanted. There wasn't much Carnival glass. A year later, Dad and some of them went, Dick Clough, Carl Geisler, went up to Des Moines to the International Carnival Glass. They found out what real Carnival glass was, not the bowls and the little pieces we were selling. I met Mr. Cox, who gave me my first lesson in iridescence. Buy the good stuff. Shortly after that, we went to an auction, a John Woody auction in Des Moines, Iowa, which was mostly antique glassware, but at the back of it, they had a whole bunch of Carnival. So we went up, and it turned out to be fantastic Carnival. Table sets, berry sets. We ended up buying 38 pieces. I'm pretty excited now because I hadn't seen all these sets. I've been buying bowls, selling them for 15, buying them for 15, selling them for 20. So we're on the way home, and I said, Dad, when are we going to start collecting? He goes, well, someday. This is about 72 or 3. And I said, well, I think we ought to keep the white peach stuff. There was a table set, berry set, and it was just all just gorgeous glass. I mean, some of the best I'd ever seen. So we get home, and we have 38 pieces, and poor old Mom is washing glass. Tons and tons of glass over the years. About a week later, Dad goes, let's go to this little show just north of St. Louis. So Dad and I went. It's about 3 o'clock, and he heads out to the parking lot to do a deal in the parking lot. Lots of deals were done in parking lots. So I'm in there by myself, and a couple comes through, and another couple comes through, and I start selling glass. And I sold glass, and I sold glass. Dad comes back into the room, says, what are you doing, son? I said, I'm packing glass. He goes, I know, but this doesn't close for another 2 hours. I said, well, I sold all this glass. He goes, all of it? I said, everything except for those 4 or 5 pieces. And he goes, to who? I said, well, that couple over there. So if you know Dad, here he goes. He's moving fast. That's as fast as he moved. Dad didn't have to say much. He was a big man. We ended up selling it all. There were some pieces in there I wish we had back, and we don't. Some that Mom wishes she had back. So shortly after that, we go to Lincoln Land. And I'm pretty excited about the table sets, the punch sets. And I walk into Jim Farr's room. And he's got ice blue Peacock at the Fountain, table set, berry set, punch bowl, and another 8 or 10 Peacock at the Fountain pieces. I left the room and I said, Dad, that's what I'm going to collect. So he said, okay. He said, you ought to start with the Marigold. So I go back down to Jim Farr's room. I want to buy this little compote. Well, he's leaving for dinner. He goes, all right, Reg, we'll make a deal. So I wait in front of his room, and wait in front of his room, and he never gets back. So I go up, start looking around some other rooms, and I find this beautiful Marigold bowl. So I buy it and immediately go to Harold Cox and say, what do you think of this? He goes, well, what'd you pay? I said, well, 85. He goes, you'll make your money back. He goes, I said, no, Harold. I said, I'm collecting Peacock at the Fountain, and I'm going to have it all. At the time, there wasn't any aqua opal. There wasn't an ice cream punch bowl. So we're into it. I've got all the Peacock at the Fountain except this berry bowl. And he said, be careful, be patient, you got a long time, you'll find the good stuff. So in 1981, I go to ICGA. I come around the corner, there's that berry bowl. I've got to have it. I got to have it because it's the same berry bowl that we bought in Des Moines, Iowa, that I was partners with Dad. That's about all I have to say. It's nice stuff. It's the chicken or the egg. Most people think the fruit bowl came first. Actually, that came first. And if you really want to be technical, the berry bowl was the first piece I ever owned that I kept.
Give it to your brother, Reg. You're next.
I'm next. All right. No, I got it.
Need to stand.
No, I'm fine. All right, everybody knows me, I think. If they don't, you will. Okay, Red, when we started out, Red went with Dad quite a few times early before I ever went to one. I believe it was 73 ICGA before I ever went to one, a convention. And then I went to, Dad and I also went to Hoga the next year by ourselves. That was the first time we had been to Hoga and Dad had been to Hoga. And then of course Dad and I went to Lincoln Land one year in a little Chevette, you know how big Dad was, driving in rush hour traffic in Chicago to Aurora for Lincoln Land that year. So, but what got me started was in the summer of '73. I was interested in it. He wanted to always buy and sell. I was interested in it, but I didn't know what I wanted to collect like he did. So I was having my first knee surgery that summer, and I was in the hospital actually here in Springfield. And Dad was getting antsy because the surgery was taking too long, and Mom kicked him out because he was pacing. So he went to an antique shop here in town and came back with this purple beaded shell mug. And gave it to me after I woke up out of the surgery and everything and said, here, this is what you're collecting. I said, okay, that's fine. So that was my first mug. As you guys know, I have way more than that now. So while he was hunting the Marigold Peacock at the Fountain and hunting pieces to resell, every time I went to a convention, there was a couple that as soon as we'd get unpacked, and helping Dad unload and get everything unpacked, I had to go see. I think you all know who that probably was, and that was John Lucille Brick's room. I had to go there because once John found out I started collecting mugs, he put 2 or 3 back every year, and I'd save my money all year long just to buy 1 mug from him every convention at ICGA. So I don't know, maybe what, 15, 20 of them like that through that, and that's what got me started with John. And you know, he taught me everything he could about the mugs. Now, I don't really, the only other thing I collect right now is any green bowls. I like green bowls. Kathy finally told my wife, said I had to collect something else because she couldn't afford any of the mugs I needed left for my collection. So I started collecting green bowls. But, and then, our second hobby, expensive hobby, is we breed and show purebred cats. And we'd always talked about collecting kitten pieces, but never really wanted to that much. So it just so happened one year at Lincoln Land up in Milwaukee, their convention was the same week as our cat annual award banquet. Literally less than a quarter mile away from each other. They were in the Best Western and we were in the Four Seasons. So Kathy dropped me off Saturday morning to the auction, and I go in there and there was a bunch of kitten pieces. She went on to the show and she gave me money, what, 400 in cash, 300 in cash, said buy what you can. I said okay. So I went in there and I'm sitting behind Carl and Fern Schrader. And of course, you know, Fern collected kittens too. And I'm sitting there and I'm buying, you know, I couldn't buy anything, and Carl kept raising his hand, and he kept outbidding me, and I'm like, oh, I wish he'd quit. So finally, this cup and saucer came up, and I'm bidding, and he raised his hand, and I finally smacked him on the back, and I said, would you let me have 1 piece?
Pull the mic down just a little bit, you're a little loud.
I said, would you let me have 1 piece? And he turned around and he said, oh, Roger, I didn't know you were behind me. Now, you know, this was probably, what, 98, 97? And he said, well, I didn't know you were behind there. When did you start collecting those? I said, today. So he let me...
Put it down just a little, you got it a little closer.
Whatever. He told me that he let me have that, and I came back with a cereal bowl and 2 other pieces. So that's what got us started on the kittens, and gave that to my wife. Well, maybe the 3rd year we were collecting, we were in St. Louis with my wife and her mom and dad, and it was a Jim Seek auction. We're sitting there, and there was a bunch of horse medallion pieces there. Well, Kathy grew up showing horses, so she liked the horses, but we never collected them. Well, I kept getting outbid on every single one of them. And it was by a couple that, you know, I kind of knew but didn't know real well at that time. They're sitting right up here, by the way, Dorothy, Arnold. And Kathy's like, who are they? And I told them who they were, and I said, well, they collected. Well, I don't know what happened, but she went to the bathroom. And this bowl, this powder blue bowl, came up for bid. And I bid, and I kept bidding, and Dorothy stopped, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to get this. So I got it, and I quickly wrapped it and gave it to Ron and said, hey, hide this. I'm going to give it to her for Christmas. So that's what got us started in the horse medallion. I still don't know how I got away from you, Dorothy, but we did that day. So as far as these other 2 pieces, this isn't the first mug my wife bought for me, but it's the most special one. The first one she bought was a black amethyst beaded shell here in Springfield one day on her lunch hour. This was the second one, and I know I've told this story before. It was in Bob and Sherry Sizes' room back in Indianapolis at the Embassy Suites the second time we were there. And I went in and tried to buy this from Bob and Sherry, and I couldn't get it bought. I could not get them to come down in price. And I said, well, I can't afford that. Well, I don't know still how she did it, but it was under the Christmas tree that year. I don't know how she got it bought, but they said she bought it from them somehow. And So I really like this Amberina. It's really unique. And now this white beaded shell. This is also kind of special. You know, Mom and Dad always, every year would buy, for a long time, would buy me a mug and put it under the Christmas tree. Except I kept catching on to what present it was. And so finally Dad would say, you know, Mom would wrap it in a bigger and bigger box trying to think I wouldn't catch on, and I always did. Well, finally Dad would have to make me guess what color and pattern it was before I opened it. Well, usually I was right and sometimes I was wrong. So, I mean, Dad was always trying to find a mug for me, and that's the thing about mugs. They're not expensive, and Dad knew I could afford them and buy them with my own money at the time. Well, this white beaded shell came from Hoga in 2009 auction. It was the last mug Dad ever bought for me before he passed away. So that's kind of special. I enjoy it. I'm now vice president. Maybe someday I'll be president like Dad was for this. I don't know, one of these years we'll kick him out and I'll take over, and maybe not, I don't know. But I enjoy this very much. This is what I enjoy. I enjoy going to the convention and sitting and talking with all of you. And I started in 73, 51, so that makes it basically almost 40 years I've been doing this. And like DuPont said, younger generation? Yeah, I'm the younger generation, they're younger. But I've also been doing it for 40 years, so you know, I'm not really the younger generation. We need other people to start in this. You know, you got Reg, you got Amanda, who couldn't be here, who's collecting quite a bit now, Nathan with his pieces. So, but anyway, that's what I got to say. So,
Look at it.
Kathy?
I just can't hold it.
Well, I married into the family. So in 92, Roger and I met. We were married in 93. My first introduction to all of you was that convention in Indianapolis in 93. We finished our honeymoon coming back from seeing my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and bringing their grandfather back home with us. And Roger said, "We have to go to Indianapolis."
Next week.
I said, "What do you mean we have to go to Indianapolis?" He said, "We have to go to Indianapolis. Dad's president of the association and we have to be there." I said, "Roger, I don't have any more vacation. What are you talking about?" So we finally figured out how to get there, at least for a couple of days. But when we got married, this piece was a wedding gift from Reg and Linda. I had never seen it before, although my first collection is really opalescent hobnail. This happens to be by the Dugan Company because it is really moonstone, but it's iridized. Never seen another piece like it. Linda found it in an antique shop and Reg thought she was crazy. She was looking down below, he was looking up above, and she whisked it away to buy it, and he's like, "What are you doing?" "I don't understand why you're doing this." And she said, "What better way to bring a family together than the two collections that make wood?" Well, a few years later, Roger and I were looking at a Mickey Reichel auction listing, and Mickey listed two pieces that he called unique, and he'd only seen those two pieces ever. Well, I called him and said, "No, really, I have a third piece." I was able to purchase one of them. There's a powder jar running around somewhere that I don't know who owns it, but I'd sure like to find out because I'd like to own it. So they're the only two pieces I've ever seen. They are both moonstone made by the Dugan Company, but they are treasured pieces because they really do bring both of our collections together. Then Linda, knowing that I am a knitter and a cross-stitcher as well as her daughter, introduced me to beaded purses and strings of beads and any other variety of iridized bead that you can think of. And that started me on collecting the purses. I have several different styles. That's just an example of what I have with me tonight. The pink one was a gift from my husband, although really the story is a little more interesting than he ever thought it was. We were in Georgia. We were at a cat show, but we had also taken Linda down to see her sister. And we were antiquing, and I found that purse in a case. I bought it. Well, Linda and I discussed it, and I bought the purse. And then as I'm checking out, she says, "Wait a minute, give that to me." And I'm like, "Why? I can pay for it and take it home." And she's like, "No, you don't understand. I'll sell it to Roger and he can give it to you for Christmas." So she did. And he didn't know that I already knew about it.
No, I didn't. Not till now. I didn't even know that story till now.
See, I still have a few things that you don't know about. And then about 4 years ago, when Reg and Linda sold some of their duplicate pieces at a Mickey Reichel auction, we weren't allowed to bid. The kids were told absolutely not. And we were all like, "Wait a minute, that's not fair. We collect it." And Reg's like, "No, you can't bid on it." I said, "Fine." So I went to the auction. Carl and Fern Schrader came to the auction to support Reg and Linda. Carl elbows me and he says, "Come out to the parking lot." Okay. God love Carl. I walked home with a whole bag full of enameled pieces. This berry set happened to be part of that amount of glass that I bought. So, sorry, but I didn't really need Reg and Linda that day. I spent a whole ton of money without them. And then a couple of years after that, I had changed jobs and I didn't have vacation time to be able to go to a convention. Roger went without me. I don't know why I ever let him do that, but I did. But he called me on Saturday morning and he said, "Hey, don't forget about that local auction in New Berlin. There's Carnival listed, you need to go look at it." I remembered that it was that Saturday, so I drove over there and I'm looking around and who pops his head in the door but Reg? And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Same reason you're here, that glass sitting there." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So we talked about it and he said, "What are you interested in?" I said, "I want the 2-horse medallion bowls. I don't care about the rest of it. Do whatever you want." He's like, "Okay." So he and I stood at the back of the room all day. It was a general antique auction. They sold the Carnival glass late afternoon after we'd stood around and all of the little old ladies had oohed and awed over their friends' stuff being sold. And this first piece came up. It's a red slag horse medallion. And it was so dirty that Reg and I, neither one could decide what color it was. If it was red, if it was purple, if it was green. And the lighting was awful in the room. We even took it outside and couldn't decide what color it was. So I decided what I'd pay for it and I bid on it. And I'm walking up to get it. The next piece comes up, which was the second horse medallion piece. I'm bidding on it as I'm walking up the aisle to pick up this piece, and all these little old ladies, and they were all little old ladies, turned around and gasped all at the same time because there was this young person that had spent this, in their opinion, god-awful amount of money on a piece of glass. Well, let me tell you something. When Reg and I got home, I'm not sure who was more excited to tell the rest of the Dunham family what I had actually bought, because by the time I got it cleaned up and figured out it was red slag, I had bought it for way under the money. But I'm really not sure which one of us was more excited about telling what had really happened. But I got started in it. I love the glass. I've collected a lot of stuff over the years. But this seems to be what continues to stay in the house all the time.
Kathy, bring it around.
I haven't been around a lot in the last few years because my husband and I live away. He was in the military, so we've traveled a lot. But there are stories that I know about all these people that they don't tell. And even about my father. What my father didn't tell everybody as he got older was the first word he taught us was antique. He taught us how to spell antique by driving down the road to see how many signs we could find that said antique. And when we found them, of course, we had to stop. Carnival, Reg told the story of the first convention he and Dad went to. Of course, we didn't get to go till, what, 2 years later, all of us? They went to a show or a convention, I don't remember which,
I don't know which story you're going for.
with the carnival and the jewelry.
That was a convention.
That was a convention, I thought so. I was maybe 10 or 11. I'm the only girl. My dad sold jewelry. What better thing for 11, 12-year-old girl? Your dad sells jewelry. They went to this convention and they came home with box after box of Carnival glass. My mother started washing it and they started putting it up. My thought was, oh my God, what have they done? That's the ugliest stuff I've ever seen. And particularly that orange stuff. What was he thinking? He sold all the jewelry for this stuff?
And the cases
And the table covers, everything. So my thought was, he's never gonna sell jewelry again. What am I gonna do? In time, I did come to love it. What I came to love is brocade. Now, to my father, this wasn't Carnival glass. How dare I? Right? So my mother and I'm 13 or 14, and we go to an elegant glass show in Springfield, Missouri, at the fairgrounds. And there is a beautiful brocade bonbon. I pick it up and look at it. Mom goes, "You like that?" And I said, "I love it." She goes, "Well, my dad's not with us. How about I buy it for your birthday and we won't tell your dad?" I said, "Okay." So that was my first piece of brocade, and I now have probably 350 pieces, maybe more. So that's how that all got started. I still love it. I still think it's beautiful. My father came to embrace the fact that I loved it and helped me find it.
He still shook his head like
He still shook his head every time I bought a piece of it. Then came kittens. Like my brother, I love British Shorthairs. I gave them one as a wedding gift. That's how they got started. I already had 5. Carl and Fern, of course, knew I loved kittens. Well, my husband was in the Air Force, and he was enlisted. We had no money.
Make it sound bad.
Oh, I loved the Air Force, but we really had no money. So Carl called me into his room one time and said, "I know you like kittens. I have something." He showed it to me. And he said, "How about this?" I said, "Well, how much?" So he told me, and I said, "Well, let me talk to Woody. I don't know." Woody said, "Yes, dear, I have it."
I did that long.
Yes, he does. Later on, Carl offered me the kitten's cuspidor. Woody was still in the military. I didn't get that one. So someday, maybe.
You want me to tell mine?
Yeah, you can tell the first part.
I'll tell the first part. This story is good. Antique shop down Southern Illinois. We tried to get into it for 3 years. It was open by chance. We'd go by. Almost twice a month in the summer when we weren't teaching, and about every fourth weekend during the school year if we didn't have a show. Finally got into it. Upstairs, in a little dark room, was this picture. But it was about that color. It was greasy dirt. Reg says, well, take it down, Linda, and see what he wants for it. So I did. And she said, okay. He says, we'll either love it or hate it. We won't know till we get it home. So we took it home, and I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed. Wore out 2 toothbrushes, I swear. And this is what we had. Took it to one convention, and he had a decent price on it. Not outrageous, but decent. Nobody picked it up. They picked it up, but they didn't want to buy it. Not even Steve Morrow. So we took it home, and he said, okay, it's not going out again. It goes in the cupboard, and there it is. So there it was. Now it's Leanne's turn.
Okay, like the rest of my family, I love Northwood, and I happen to love grape and cable. But I particularly love green. I have a green car, I have a green house, I have a green room, I have green glass. I do love green.
For years.
I do love green. So Woody and I are on our honeymoon, and of course we're hitting antique shops because we really can't afford to do a lot of other things. And we're in Georgia along the coast, and we go into a little shop. And I see this tumbler, and it's in a case that's locked up, and I can't get to it. And I said, Woody, I need to look at that. He said, what? I said, no, I need to look at that. I said, it matches Dad's picture. And he said, really? And I said, no, it matches Dad's picture. So I get it out, and I ask the guy how much he wants, and it's not damaged, and it does match because it's a little dark shop. And we go back that night, and I call Mom and Dad. And I say, Dad, I found a tumbler for your picture. What picture? The green one. The one I want. And he goes, are you sure? I said, Dad, yes. Does it have good color? Dad, yes, it does. Are you sure? This goes on 3 or 4 times. I'm like, Dad, really? It matches. You'll love it. But Dad, I don't have enough money. And he said, okay, you buy it. I'll pay you when you get here. I said, okay. So I bought it. We got home. He goes, that matches. Thank you, Dad. Eventually, this came back to me at Christmas one year. This is the original tumbler. She has 6 now, I have 1. I don't have the picture, but I have a tumbler.
And they all want the picture, so.
We all like the picture.
About
We all do love
129
the picture.
people that are in the list too, but
Every one of
my
us.
4 kids got first.
In addition to the green, I do love grape and cable. For years, I wanted a master. I really wanted a green one. Haven't gotten one yet. I do have a purple one, and I do have several others. So if anybody has a green one, it's really pretty, because I happen to like really pretty stuff too. You know, I'm here. But the brocade is truly, this is my true passion. This is my love. It's what I like to buy. It's what I like to hunt for. I don't find much. A couple other stories on the grape and cable. This goes back to being married. We're in an antique show in Fort Collins, Colorado. We walk in, and there's a lady there that has a booth with quite a bit of Carnival in it. So I walk in, and in the very front, sitting right about here on the table, is an aqua opal grape and cable punch cup. And I picked it up, and I looked at it, and it was really nice. And I look at it, and I said, ma'am, how much do you want for this? She goes, $60, but it'd be worth more if it had the saucer. I said, okay. So I took that. Then she had a red bowl. And I looked at it, and it was way underpriced, and it was slag. Well, it was way overpriced for our budget. Once again, Dad, There's a Red Bull, I think you want it, but we don't have that much money. Dad puts the money in, Dad gets the bowl, Dad sells the bowl. That's happened over the years for the two of us. Now that we can finally afford to buy our own, we do. But for years, we went hunting because that's what we like to do. And every time we found something, it was like, hey, Dad. So that's how that all started for the two of us.
That's how it started with you. I'm not sure if the word's spoken. Okay. And as she's very elegantly put it, I married into this. And I did learn real early on that I was then made part of what they called the Dunham pickers. I mean, we head up, it's out. You hit a town, get this one, get that one, somebody moves real quick. So we did kind of learn how to do a lot of picking. I was introduced to Carnival glass, I believe some folks in here will remember, is the St. Louis convention. Ruth, remember that night we danced?
No.
You know, I know it had to be you, Ruth. Anyway, I did learn a lot that night. I gave my future wife, at that time we were engaged, and I gave her almost a heart attack because I was helping out with the convention. I can't sit still, I don't know how long I sat up here. But I helped show the glass that was being auctioned off. And I picked up a green, lime green
opal rose show plate.
And I picked it up, and you know, I was just a piece of glass. I didn't know anything about it. And I was having it one-handed up here like this. I was copying the guy that was next to me. And then I saw her facial features kind of go white, and then I finally realized he had said something like $8,000 behind me, and I went, oops, both hands, and we made sure we didn't break it. And as soon as he hit the hammer, it went to the guy that said, it's mine. I said, okay. So I did like the green, but I fell in love. I kept picking out the red pieces. And as Leanne said, you know, being in the military, I didn't have a lot of money. So the first red piece that I could ever afford to buy was this one. I've kept it. I know it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's the first red piece I owned, you know, and I liked red. Well, Dad found out that I liked Cracker Jars. I think it was one day we were hunting. We were duck hunting down at the cabin, and we were talking about, and he asked me what I really liked, and it was grape and cable, but I liked Cracker Jars. So one Christmas, Mom and Dad bought me a Cracker Jar, and I think now I have 4. And they've all been bought by the Dunham pickers. But that started me out. Being married into it, I've become to love Carnival glass. But the only offshoot of this is my pocketbook gets too light every time I come here. And she does call me cheap, but she gets what she wants.
One other thing about what he said about the lime green opal, I sat in the back. We weren't quite married yet, we were engaged. And I sat in the back going, please Lord, don't let him drop it. Please Lord, don't let him drop it. Please Lord, don't let him drop it.
Okay, since Amanda is not here, but I know the stories behind her pieces, I'm going to go ahead and talk for her. Amanda started coming to conventions when she was 2, which was long before I joined the family. But she had her likes and dislikes, as all 2-year-olds do. And she about gave her dad and mom a heart attack because Grandma and Grandpa talked her into waving at the banquet when they were selling whimsies. Unbeknownst to Mom and Dad. And I don't know, she bought, what, a $300 whimsy and about sent everybody into a panic. But as she grew up, she had her opinions about what she liked, and she could tell everybody what those patterns are and if it was pretty and if Grandpa would buy it or not. And when she was about 12, probably, she and the Chesney's granddaughter, Ramsey, were the best of friends at every convention and ran around and went to the pool, and they even got into a bidding war at a silent auction. And they got into such a bidding war that finally the grandmother said, okay, the two of you have got to figure this out, because all these are new little shot glasses, but they were the hanging cherries. Both girls loved them. There were two of them. So they made a deal with each other. We'll split them. We'll buy them and we'll split them. So this was Amanda's first real purchase that she made her own deal on. New little piece, but it's cute. You know, she loves it. That got her started on the cherries, because as she grew up, she decided that that's what she wanted her kitchen decorated in, was cherries. Red and white, black, all cherries. So that's what started her on her patterns. Then her dad found this peach opal piece. In fact, I think it was hiding in a box of Dick Clough's glass, wasn't it?
It was at a yard sale.
Oh, okay.
About a block from the house.
He found it, knew that Mandy loved it, so that was her Christmas gift that year. Her grandmother also knew that she loved the pattern, but probably couldn't afford a whole lot of the pieces. But Grandma and I, at an auction, were sitting together. We saw this piece come up. And I said, Grandma, I know somebody that'd like that. She's like, you know what? You're right. So graciously, we wound up with it, and Amanda got it for Christmas last year. And then this little guy that's now asleep decided that he really liked it because he spent a lot of time at our house, and he always wanted to put his hand in the mugs. He'd come to our house and he'd say, "Pretty, up." So I'd pick him up and we'd spend a half hour standing in front of Roger's mug cabinet with the door open and me holding the mug and him putting his fist in it. It was fine. He was learning. He wasn't hurting anything, but he put his fist in a whole lot of mugs. So I wound up buying him one of the little Hoga mugs, and I gave it to Mandy, and I said, here's his first piece. I know it's new, but if he breaks it, who cares? I have another one for his collection. Let him carry that one around and get used to handling glass. And that's exactly what he's done. That's his piece. He carries it around the house. If it drops and gets broken, oh well, we'll figure out another piece. We've also given him some other pieces that he can't handle, but we wanted him to have something that he could actually handle the glass and understand it, so that when he was in a room like this, he knew what he could and could not touch. So that started him. Now his dad kind of came into the family, and he was like, what is all that stuff, when he was at our house or at Reg and Linda's house. And we introduced him to the glass, and he fell in love with it. And I said to Roger, I said, you know, Casey's part of the family. He's, you know, asked Mandy to marry him. They have Dakota. I think he needs to be introduced to the glass. I said, let's give him one of your mugs that we can replace. So Roger went to the cabinet, and he picked up this standard orange tree mug, and he said, you know, he said, we can replace that and pretty easily. He said, let's give that into Casey and get him started. Okay. So we gave him that for Christmas. Now, that was the day before Christmas, because we had something else to do Christmas Day. And the other side of the family, we were traveling back and forth. So they had come to our house, we gave them their gifts, and then we left to go north for my parents and my family Christmas. The next day, he wound up getting the shaving orange tree mug from Reg and Linda. So he started pretty quickly on mug collection. And then we wound up, he was successful bidder on the blue Singing Birds mug on eBay to get started a little bit on his own. And he's asked lots of questions, and we've handed over all the books to get him started. And then he's also acquired the Peacock at the Fountain tumbler. Roger and I were successful on getting that for him. We've, gotten all 4 generations involved pretty quickly and pretty easily, and so we're very thankful that that Casey, along with his son, has joined the family and is now also collecting with us.
I will speak for Nathan, since he's not here. We started taking Amanda and Nathan when they were quite young to conventions. And we were at one with Nathan, and Grandpa said, now Nathan, you really need to pick out something to collect. A color, a pattern, a shape. This particular auction had a lot of the little saucers. And well, he really liked the green one. Grandpa said, I think that'd be too much. So he and Grandpa purchased this one. Nathan had about $10 of his own money in his pocket. I think he was 4 or 5. I think he was 5. And he said, here, Grandpa, take this. Put this on it. So he started out helping to purchase his first piece. Well, he has a lot of them. Now he is into Dragon and Lotus, and his first piece is an amber one from Aunt Kathy and Uncle Roger. Now he's got, I don't know, 70. The fun of it is being able to find pieces for the kids for Christmas. Everybody gets a piece of Carnival glass. Well, it was Mom and Dad, Grandpa and Grandma. Now it's Grandma that continues to do it. But that's the fun of it. The pieces, first piece I really kept for me was this. I thought it was gorgeous. Reg had bought like 9 of them from this importer. Came from England. And we took them to shows, and took them to shows, and took them to shows, and sold them. And this one was the last one. Oh, I just took it home and stuck it in my china cabinet. I said, we've got the money out of it, I can keep this one. And then I said, I'm going to collect baskets. He said, oh no. I said, oh yes. He had purchased 2 of these from the importer. He sold one immediately. This one went in my cabinet. Why not? We had 4 children. We knew they were all going to college. We couldn't keep a whole lot. We could keep some little pieces. It wasn't until they all got out that Mom and Dad really got to keep a lot. But we went to conventions. We met people. We made so many, many friends. Never in the world did I think I would be one of the, quote, older generation of Carnival collectors. Back when we started, we thought, oh my, some of these people have been in it several years. Whoa, will we ever stay? We read books, we studied books. Same with the kids. We kind of quiz them, going places. We would go to this humongous flea market up in northern Illinois. Kane County. A lot of you heard Kane County. The boys would take off and go down one aisle. Reg would go down the middle aisle, and Leanne and I'd go down the other aisle with John. And when we found something, if they found something they didn't think they could handle, one of them would go get Dad. But they had money. They knew they could pick up a piece of jewelry and tell whether it was good or not. They could tell which piece of glass was good or not. And they had more fun trying to outdo Mom and Leanne or Dad as we were going up and down. One of the last pieces walked up my back door. Lady had it in her hand like this, kind of swinging it. I thought, oh, she's got a green down. She comes in and she hands it to me. Of course, I go like this. Reg happened to have come over that day to do some yard work for me. I said, Reg, you need to come over here and look at this. He says, oh my gosh, Mom. I said, but. He said, yeah, but. Turns out the lady is the daughter of the art teacher when I began teaching in the district. She said, well, we were cleaning out Mom's house and we found this, and I talked to one of the girls that you go to the DQ with every day or every week, and she said she thought I ought to bring it and show it to you. And we said, well, it's not worth very much because it's cracked. She said, okay, I'll just take it home and throw it in the dumpster. I know my eyes popped and my mouth dropped, and I said, I don't think so. I'd like to buy it. Well, she said, you said it's cracked, it's not worth it. I said, that's okay. I said, it's a very rare, unusual color. I'd like to have it just to sit in my cabinet and know that it came from Doris. And she said, oh, okay. She said, well, anything anybody in the family didn't want, they threw in the dumpster. And I'm like, oh, wish I could have seen it first. I have no idea what went in the dumpster. No idea. I love Carnival. My kids love Carnival. Their spouses love Carnival. The grandkids love Carnival. Even this little guy. Got a big cabinet in our living room. For those of you that have been there know this big cabinet. 3 big sections. Comes down to the floor almost with glass. And this little boy loves to stand in front of it and look. Never touches the glass. Never touches the big, I don't have to clean his fingerprints. Just almost. And he stands there and he gets his nose up there and he says, oh, red. Pretty. And he goes over here. White. He can name the colors, and he is starting to name patterns because we let him handle some of the glass. These kids handled glass, they hauled glass, they carried glass, and they all fell in love with it. I just feel so blessed that my family loves it and that we have enjoyed it so many years and have made so many, many, many friends. That's what it's all been. I get goosebumps talking about friends. That's what it's been about, is all of the people we've met, all of the stories we've accumulated, all of the pieces of glass from some very, very special people. Thank you.